This week in Hey the Parents, we're diving into Fierce Intimacy by Terry Real, the kind of relationship book that makes you stop mid-argument and go, oh, I've definitely done that. We're talking about what it really takes to stay connected, not just with your partners, but with yourself, when life feels like one loop of miscommunication, parenting chaos, and trying to talk through things without losing your mind. In the first half of the book, we're exploring session 1 through 3, where Terry Real breaks down the adaptive child, the power struggle between shame and grandiosity, and the 5 losing strategies that keep us locked into the same fight over and over again. We'll share what hits hardest from those moments where your inner critic hijacks the conversation and learn about leaning into the second consciousness that can take over. It's funny, humbling, and uncomfortably relatable because this Real reminds us you can be right or you can be in a relationship. Grab your copy of Fierce Intimacy or just your coffee and join us as we unpack the first half of the book up through chapter 26 and talk about what it really means to fight fair, repair fast, and love fiercely in real life. Because in Hey the Parents, it's an honest discussion about raising kids. I'm Michael Haidt.
I'm Sarah D.
And I'm Mike Levine.
Kids don't come with a handbook, so we need your help.
Where do babies come from?
Where do you think they come from?
Is this a kissing book?
Mama! Mama!
What?
Hi.
I learned it by watching you.
There are no rules in this house. Not like a regular mom. I'm a cool mom.
We sent them to the best boarding schools. We hired the best nannies. We did everything right.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
No drinking, no drugs, no kissing, no tattoos, no piercings, no ritual animal slaughters of any kind.
Together, we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
This is Hey Other Parents, an honest, messy, imperfect show for raising kids.
Hey, welcome back. It's us again.
Yo,
Hello.
what's going on?
What's up?
Toodly-doo.
I just have to say, if I sound tired, I am sorry right now. I've been at many cheer events this weekend, and they are consuming my life.
Well, we're cheering for you, buddy. I mean, some of you might be cheering for your daughter. You know, we're cheering for you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. I'm trying to survive.
Listen, Sarah tried to warn you. I don't know what happened there, but she tried.
You tried, man.
No. Oh, Sarah, save me.
It looks like I'm busy on those days.
Oh, man. So we're so glad that you guys are here to hang out with us as we figure out this parenting thing on season 3 of Hey Other Parents. Just a reminder, this is the end of season 3. And do not worry, we'll be back on December 12th. So there's only 4 weeks without us. How will you get through Thanksgiving without us? The answer to that, my friends, is cinnamon rolls. And maybe you could take some skills from today's episode and put them to the test as you put on your personal shield to ping your way through Thanksgiving companions. So whether you're in the car, folding laundry, cooking dinner, getting organized, or on the go, we know that you have a lot of choice for podcasts out there. So we thank you for listening to ours. And of course, let's send a big welcome to our new moms and dads listening, and a big hearty hello to the returning listeners who are back to put up with us for another episode for this season's podcast. So if this is your first time joining us on this podcast, Hey the Parents, it is a chance for a few of us parents who decided that we needed to join our efforts together and try to get to this raising kids thing, as we call it, a survival course. We pick a different theme, we pick a different topic each week where we discuss it from the standpoint of when we were younger, growing up with our own parents, and then we shift on over to now as adults, where we certainly did not get a handbook with our own kids. We talk about what we go through, we share some of our experiences, and we learn from each other, and every week we feel a little bit better because we have each other and we have all of you. So we'd love to hear from you guys in our show. This is kind of the theme of the episode. The question this week is, what are your takeaways from the book? If you'd like to answer this question, have comments, questions for the show, you can get in touch with us in one of 3 ways. 1, you can leave us a message in our Hey the Parents voicemail line. 2, you can email the show. Or 3, you can join us on social media. All that information is packed into the show notes. Why not pause the episode right now and tell us about your book reactions? So without further ado, we're going to jump right into this main part of the podcast, and that entails a topic of the week. Sarah, why don't you tell us about what we're in for today?
Okay, so we all read Terry Real's Fierce Intimacy novel. And, as parents, we recognize our relationships influence our children. And our goal, I think, for the 3 of us, and I'm sure for all of you, is to work on ourselves and to improve our relationships with our partners, our friends, our family, so we can become better role models. And if we're better role models and healthier individuals, we could be better parents.
So we kind of thought that when we were doing the season episode about how to avoid blowouts with our spouses and stuff, we were kind of thinking that there was a conversation there that kind of felt like it could go a little deeper. And when we were doing that, we were like, of course we were laughing because and we'll probably laugh a little bit today, but there's moments where, where we were going into it, we're like, you know what, there's probably more here. There's probably like a deeper conversation. So we kind of found this book. It was kind of recommended to my wife and I to kind of help build our relationship a little better. And I felt like I want to share with Mike and Sarah, and they were kind of open to the idea. So we thought we would do this as kind of like a book club. So I know we've been kind of talking about it. I know we've been previewing it at the beginning of every episode. So we're here today. And I thought maybe it would be a good place maybe to kind of zoom out a little bit and kind of give our overall impressions on the book. Mike, you want to start us off?
I liked listening to the book, and it really made me reflective on myself. I think I was talking about it before the show with you guys, and I was looking at my childhood, because that's what these books, these types of things make you do. They make you reflect on your own personal childhood situations. And I was thinking back to like childhood abandonment, and I was talking to Mike and Sarah about this, that before the show started, that I had a good childhood, but there were some situations that in my childhood that were questionable, can say. And it's funny because those situations that happened in my life, it could make you become a bad person from within, but and I think Sarah said it best. It kind of showed me what not to be towards my own children. When I, just to give you guys a little idea, when I was younger, my mom and my father divorced, and it wasn't the best divorce. And there were, I remember vivid situations that are still burned into my head. So reading this book kind of did bring up those feelings. And it kind of made me reflect on how I am as a parent, and it reminded me that's not what I want to be like when, with my, not my mother, my mom was great, and my dad, he had his issues, but he made mistakes. And I'm just thinking about, being a father and what he had done, and how I don't want that to ever happen to my family. And that's kind of like, what makes me be a dad from within, is just reflecting on that, thinking about that situation and what I would never want my children to go through.
I'm sure there's like a lot of people, at home, we probably have experts listening at home that have a little bit more knowledge about therapy and things, but there's like an ongoing kind of debate, I think, about nature versus nurture. And this idea of kind of like, your surroundings versus like your inner you. And you're a damn good person, in my opinion, and I think you care a lot about your family. So
thanks, man.
The things that you do and the way you are, I mean, listen. Nobody Jay Guadi's like you, buddy.
Try.
That's it. But the things that you,
I know.
All we can do.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a choice.
Yeah, it's just being a dad is tough. He talks about this, about male depression too, and you guys really should listen to it, as far as if, all the dads out there, because, we don't really talk about our feelings so much, I feel, personally. I am a feeling talker, but sometimes I hide I hide things, and, because it creates a sense of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, you as men or this society kind of pressure that I feel sometimes, that like men have to be tough, men have to work, men have to provide for their families, which is also things that he talks about. Those things, sit within me, and, I try to be tough for everybody when, so that I could keep everybody going. But sometimes, like, I think, to myself, like, who's going to help me keep going? Like, who can I talk to sometimes? So, because I'm like the armor and the shield for everybody else, right? But like, sometimes the armor and shield cracks and needs help too,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's really like deep and meaningful, because I think that is a huge pressure that's not talked about often, is about how men are carrying so much of this load, and I think there's also like, and you're also like the nature part of like men, with like actual physiological stuff, like where you want to be the protector, like you are hardwired to a certain extent to want to do all those things, but society doesn't also allow you to say, okay, that's how you're hardwired, but you do have feelings, because society is so different than being nomads, and like these are feelings that are going to come and arise, and like how do you alleviate that for yourselves,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's so much there that you bring up. Like it's this idea that like, I think culturally speaking, I think there's a lot of like, he talks about men and women, talks about that whole thing, and we'll get into that a little bit later, kind of how we react and things like that from societal pressures and things that we kind of grew up with. But what I liked about the book, I think it was very honest. I feel like it was very practical. I like that some of the lessons, whenever he was doing it, I didn't feel judged, which I kind of liked, because I feel like I'm the kind of person I could like easily turn away and be like, all right, I don't need someone already complaining about me who doesn't even know me. You know what I mean? But I felt like he goes across this with like kind of a method where he will easily talk about his own mistakes and growing up, and kind of how him and his wife have these blowout arguments, and how he still has to kind of like battle his initial reaction and like wanting to like get into he says him and his wife are both fighters, which I could, that doesn't seem too far from where I live. So,
isn't that all of us, right?
I grew up in New York, a little spice,
Yeah.
But but that's kind of like, and it's like, it's definitely one of those things where you're like, all right, cool. I could see this, and him being a little bit older, you kind of almost like get this like mentality in your head, or at least I did, thinking about like, how like, oh, well, he's been through this and he's been in a relationship for a long time, and him and his wife been together for a long time, and they've probably been through different like like growing periods, and they probably were in that heated period when they first got earlier on they were younger, and then he's been through the stages where we are all probably right now, and then it changes again, and it's just interesting to see like, oh, this is kind of how he's been through it, and to hear the perspective of somebody who's older. I think we also have this stereotypical belief that like all like grandpas and grandmas like don't have those thoughts anymore, but he's like just as ready to fight just like when he was in his 20s, but like he reacts differently now, and I think that's kind of cool.
He separates the mind into like two structures. Like you have like your adaptive child, right, and then your which you kind of think back and kind of go to what you know and what you've learned growing up in your childhood, which is what I was mentioning before, just like being reflective on my own childhood and how I act now, and what I've been through, so you have like that, I think you called it the whoosh, where you just kind of like react, off the hip, and then you have your adult side of things where it's like you take a second to think about your actions, and you come up with the best way to handle situations between yourself and your wife and your family. It's pretty interesting.
Sarah, how about you? How about you? What were your initial reactions or early impressions?
Well, I think for me, being adopted, I've done some like therapy work in terms of dealing with some of the issues that arise when you are adopted, like the abandonment issues, and kind of like thinking about how you protect yourself when you're younger and when you're little, and how that kind of shows up now in your adult life. So like a lot of the things that he spoke about really struck a chord with me, because those are things that I am cognizant of, and kind of like Levine, I too had a decent childhood, but there definitely were some moments that in my upbringing where it could have defined me to be like maybe like angrier, I think there's still some anger, as I'm discovering, that's there, but it doesn't show up in outwardly like the way that I would have seen, and I think that drives my parenting and in my relationships too, like how I tend to try to retreat and like protect myself, and what shield I'm using in that moment to kind of like ding off things, So it definitely, he struck a chord. But I appreciated though that he, a lot of times was like very self-deprecating, you know, where he kind of was like, all right, you know, like I had to do better than my wife, so I said this, you know. And I think that sometimes, I think in relationships, like, yes, in the moment, like fighting and things like that is not good, you know, like, or doesn't feel great. But I also think that there's something about like kind of reflecting back, or even if not with your spouse, but like to yourself, be like, all right, this is what I do, and kind of like poke fun of yourself, because we're human at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, if you go about trying to be perfect, it's not going to happen. So I think you have to kind of appreciate who you are and know that, you know, you're messing this stuff up here and there, and that, you know, all you can do is try to be better the next day.
I like that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that he talks about too in this book is mindfulness, and it's an interesting kind of way to describe it, because in mindfulness, it's kind of like more like tapping into like what's around you, and like the way you're kind of reacting in the world, how you're feeling in your internal kind of body and stuff, and like if you're, you know, sensing how you're reacting to circumstances, or being kind of tapped into like, you know, your physical state, and kind of like communicating with your body and kind of that whole thing. But the thing that's kind of interesting is he doesn't just kind of like leave you with this like really hypothetical sort of like, you know, mystical kind of nature. He kind of spends a little bit of time where I like that he says, like, you know, pay attention to kind of how you're feeling in the moment, and kind of like how your body's reacting, and then like try to like pay attention to, you know, what you're thinking in the moment, and kind of like choosing not to react. I like that he kind of gives you very specific, real ways to kind of be aware and how to react in those moments, and like kind of how you could be different kinds of people, but how you could react healthy in different circumstances, like when you're getting worked up or kind of reacting to things. So I thought that was pretty good. I like that it was a little bit more strategy stuff and a little less mindfulness stuff, with like just kind of being more aware, and kind of like, here's what you could do here, here's what you could do here. And then you spend some time kind of getting to know yourself. And I thought that was like really helpful, for me at least, because it made more sense to me than kind of like always tapping into how I'm feeling in the moment. But I did like kind of this idea that it was like, when you're going to react a certain way, learning to pause and then ask yourself, is that initial reaction the best reaction? I think that's probably a big chunk of, you know, a lot of the teachings.
Right, which is what like he was trying to say, like tap into your adult side of your brain rather than that whoosh childhood knee-jerk response. Correct. Right?
Yeah,
because I think that's what always happens, right? Like you when you get angry, you just like all of a sudden you know, right off the hip, just attack. You know
what it is? What he's
yeah.
I don't know. Do you guys do that?
He said something. He said
yeah.
And I was like walking the dogs when he like that. So I had like that moment to like be quiet, like kind of really reflect on it. Was he said that like no adult is abandoned, you know, and like you have to remind yourself when you're coming at like your partner.
Oh yes,
and
I wrote
was
that
like,
down too.
Yo, like that struck a chord in my heart. I was like, he's right. Like I am safe. Like, and he said that he's like, you're safe now. You know, like your adult self is safe. Like your child self. Like no, like you have to remind yourself that. And I was like, all right, you're right. I was like, well, geez. As I was like walking in the darkness with the dogs, and I was like reflecting. I was like, Terry. Terry.
Right. Well, it's funny you say that, Sarah, because I wrote that down too. Because again, thinking back to my childhood, so there's this sense of abandonment that I have within me, especially with male figures, right? So I was thinking back to it, and recently I've been calling my father, my birth father, and I talk to him maybe like once a week, and just kind of connecting with him and reconnecting with him. I mean, we don't have much to talk about all the time, but you know, just to I've been thinking about why I've been doing it, right? Why I've been doing it, because it's about like, I don't want to hold on to any of that childhood trauma anymore. Like that's I don't need, you know, I am the man I am because of the situations that have happened in my life, right? And I think I'm a pretty good guy, you know? So like I have no resentment towards my father and the things that he's done, you know? And then I think back to my children and I think, how can I teach my children about forgiveness, right? So like, how can I ask for forgiveness if I can't forgive anybody else, right? And and I think back to my own my childhood trauma. Like, I don't need to have resentment or anger towards my father. Like, I forgive you, man. You messed up way back when, but it's over. I'm in my 30s. I don't need to hold on to that anger, and I'm able to move forward and teach my children a lesson too.
Well, like something that you bring up, it's like I think was really interesting, and it's pretty amazing that you're sharing all this because it says a lot about your character.
Thanks, man.
The thing that he keeps bringing up, which I have a really hard time with, my dad and I, we're like oil and water. We argue a lot, and one of the things that I think that I was sort of surprised by was this idea is that you're not doing it for their sake, you're doing it for your benefit. And my wife tells me all the time, like, when we're getting into like dumb arguments, whatever, but like, she's like, you get all worked up, this is how you react. Like, he's never going to change, whatever it is. And she's like, you get like yourself and like eat your stomach in a knot. And she's like, you got to calm yourself down for you. I'm like, to hell with that, blah, blah, blah. But like, she's right, and that's what this whole thing was like. And I know I should probably have listened to it. But the thing is, like, when you read it, when you hear it in a book, you know how it is. It's like always the same thing. When you hear from like another person, like, oh, you're right. And then it was on my wife, and she's probably like, are you kidding right now? But the thing is so interesting is that doing it for yourself and taking a moment to step off the train or whatever, it's like all it does is hurt you and hurt your relationships. It makes you feel bad. So like this, when he talks about this containment boundary, which I thought that was a part in the book that kind of, really stuck out to me, was this idea that like, and I pictured Gandalf with his shield because, when you're trying to save everybody and you're in your shield and
you shall not pass.
Yeah. You're in the mines of Moria, baby. But the thing is I thought that I felt like when he was talking about that like idea of like almost like being in a tent and rain hitting it and hearing that ping, ping, ping. And then he talked about like one of his, it was either his or his wife was talking about, I think it was him. He was talking about one of his patients that used to always go visit her sister. And then when they get together and then it would always turn into an argument. It didn't matter what it was. Like it would start out good. And then by the second day they were arguing, there would be some crying and then she'd leave and then do it all over again. And she was trying to go into this like trip a second time with this idea that she was trying not to turn into the same struggle, that it was just going to be like this, this path that was unavoidable. And she tried some of the strategies that he said, and it was really kind of the things that I'm kind of focusing in on here about myself. And it was about putting up that shield. And then she said like, she wanted to like step away for a moment. And then like, I think it was something along the lines of like, she wanted to like step out and get in her car and like go to the grocery store to get milk, whatever it was. And then the sister was like, I'll come with you. And then all of a sudden it was like game on. Yeah. And then she's in the car and she's like, could you pull over for a minute? And then it was like something along the lines of, I have to criticize your parenting. You're doing this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, and this wrong. And then she was like, with her containment boundary, she decided to like, hear it, not put up a wall, but hear the things the person was saying and deciding in the moment if she felt that those things were something that she felt were true or untrue. And if it was something true, she let it in. And it was something untrue, she just like pinged it off like the shield. And she just said, thank you for your advice, even though she obviously did not agree with any of it.
Yeah.
Maybe some of it was true to some degree. And then she came back, she said, you had the best trip because I didn't really argue. But like initially, if that was me from 5 years ago, I would be like, oh, that's a bunch of BS. Like, why does she have to be the one to like take on the responsibility for the two of them? But then like hearing this book and thinking about it, she didn't do it for, I mean, obviously it improved their relationship, but I think what was so powerful for me, at least, was that it made her not feel worse. It made her not cry. It made her like walk away calm. And like, and then I think she also said that the sister kind of got a little more worked up, but the idea was like, almost like not to win an argument, but to actually be sane. And I thought that was really amazing. That was, of all the parts in the book, I think for me, at least, that was something that I'm like, oh, I need to work on that. But I think like it impacts me the most.
Yeah, and to add to that, he talks about like those 5 losing strategies, right? And I think that's some of the things that he gets to in that situation, like being right all the time, trying to control your partner. These are all things I guess we'll talk about later, but those are like key components in like fighting with your spouse, right? Like you always want to be right over your spouse so that you could show them that they were wrong. I don't know. In my head, I'm like, you're thinking wrong. Do it this way. You're wrong. I'm right. You know, but that's actually, you know, obviously, and you know, there's other things that he mentions, but that's like a losing strategy for you in your relationship. You know, like stop trying to control the other person.
Well, like that's the thing, right? He's like, what does he say? He's like, you could be right or you could be married. Which one's more important to you?
Exactly.
And I was like, oh,
exactly.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I feel like I'm sure I can assume every relationship does this. Like, where you're like, you start sitting there and you're like, you know what? Like that bothers me. Like, you know, this person's saying this thing, but like I know I'm right. I just need to explain myself.
Yeah.
And then he talks about that. It's like you're getting on this like thing of like just explaining like who's right, who's wrong, and they're like, I could justify this. And then at the end of it all, like it's all about perception anyway. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's all you're gonna do.
Right. That's what he says. Like, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, and he can't say that enough. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy sounds like me when I say it doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter after you probably said your piece.
Yeah, exactly. Listen,
I'm
not
gonna
a
say how I feel.
psychologist.
I'm gonna prove I'm right, and I'll tell you it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, wait, what?
Terry told me to say it doesn't matter.
But maybe we can talk about some of the losing strategies
this is
because that to me seems like something that that was something that, you know, for me at least, that one that you had mentioned about this being right or trying to figure out who's right doesn't really work. It's, what does he call it? Because it says like a scientific method to figure out your relationship.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter who's right or wrong.
It's like,
it's just, you know, you're trying to figure out how you can both be happy and live with it. You know,
objective reality doesn't matter. Who's right, who's wrong, doesn't matter. Who cares? How are we going to work as a team to solve the issue? That's his his thing, and I wrote that down here because that struck with me because, like, again, I'm always trying to tell in my relationship, Taylor the same thing, like, I'm right, you're wrong, and I think she gets frustrated with that, and I gotta be reflective. I mean, as would anybody, right? But yeah,
that was just funny when you put it up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I just try to be reflective on myself and how I speak to my wife, and just like, hey, I gotta stop being this adaptive child and focus more on the functional adult.
Yeah.
But I think that was good too, is he also says like how this is connected to part of the book, but that's why we're here talking about it. Was that like when you're in these moments and your feelings are upset, like reacting in a way that you're just gonna be like almost like walled off, and then like, but being retaliatory about how you're in the moment. That's not good either, because you don't, that's kind of like almost not being in that moment where you're communicating. You're just kind of like from high up, you're trying to like being grandiose and trying to tell the person kind of like how they're wrong. And I'm going to prove they're wrong, or I'm just going to be quiet for 3 days. And, and then whenever you talk to me, I'm going to react in a short way. I think that was for me, that's eye opening. Cause like I'm the kind of person that I get upset and I'm like, I'm not ready to talk yet. But since I'm not ready to talk, I'm going to give you a little bit of an attitude, even though I'm not being loud, and I realize that's very childish and probably something that I should be aware of.
Yeah, no, we were laughing, Height and I, like during like lunch or whatever, talking about our horses. Yeah. I was like, well, like, hold on. I was like, I got to climb my little pony, because like, how can I look? I'm short. How can I look down upon you if I'm just standing? I have to be on my high horse, like.
Right.
But, does anyone feel like they're like with the losing strategies, like, or the losing, like, the losing strategies, like that you at one point have dipped your toe in each of them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like, I feel like, and like he says, you can't do like, he was talking about the fight, flight, or fix. And, he's like, you can't say you're all of them. And I'm like, but I have been, like, I think Sarah has evolved so many different ways, like, especially like dealing with trying to heal and things like that. And my relationship with Jean's been like going across spans of lifetimes.
Right.
We've been together since we were 16.
Yeah.
So like, we've definitely fought in different ways and stuff like that. So like, like, looking at like those 5 losing strategies, I'm like, I've done every single one of those, and like, part of me is like, how do I get out of this? Because definitely withdrawing is probably my default, though. I definitely withdraw. That's my default where I am, and definitely walled off is where I go. Because I have to protect myself. I'm gonna be silent. And he also said something about like how when you do that, that's like punishing your partner, you're rejecting their love or something like that. And like in my grown-up mind, that makes sense. But this was like when I was like walking the dogs in the darkness by myself, and he said that, I was like, wow, I'm such a mean person. Like, it made me think about like,
I know.
I'm like, yes, like it feels good to me because I'm silent and like, I'm walled off and I'm stonewalling. But then at the same time, I'm like, wow, for Gene, that probably feels like so much rejection, I'm like, I need to fix that, and I want to believe I don't really do that with the children, but that made me think about, does that show up with them as well? Because again, like, you're trying to always be better. And that was something my mom used to do to us, was like retreating, walling off, not talking for like, there was like one time I remember my mom didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks, and like that felt terrible. And I know I haven't done that to the kids per se, but then like, like there's different ways you can do it. And I was like, oof, so that's like a heavy thought that I was having, when listening to this, how that influences all my relationships,
I think that's hard because like when you say it, I feel like, you and I were joking that we're hanging out in the top left corner, the top left of the grid. And, you guys, obviously, between the three of us are going to have similarities and differences in different things. But, that just awareness of like how that other person might be feeling is so hard when you're caught up in the moment. But that feeling that you might be hurting the person, I think like for me, that definitely resonated as well. He talked about the whole thing with like, his son with the story with the hockey that you guys probably listened to in the book, how he had his play date and it was just like, only about himself, not thinking of the other person. And then he related to like a guy who went on vacation with his wife and like they had he thought he had a good time. She had a bad time and he was only thinking about himself. And he talks about it and he says, when you're growing up, at home, this idea of like, you're a child, you're supposed to be getting nurture, guidance, and limits. And he says that, like the thing that you're lacking, it's what you deserved and did not get. And it was really interesting to talk about how he talked about it without like making you feel bad for the way that, you might act in certain circumstances. And then, you're not off the hook. You got to repair it. You got to do better. But he does talk about how like, maybe by lacking in one of those things, it was something your parents should have given you, or you should have grown up with. And now you got to figure it out. But those things, Sarah had mentioned it, like it's wild to think about how you're reacting and how those things are impacting your kids. One of the things that like he talks about in relationships, and I guess it relates to our kids too, is that you're either in like, or what does he say? Like you're disharmony or you're in repair. And this idea that you're trying to like, you're never like in perfection, because that's a very boring, he says it too. It's a very boring way to, if you're never fighting, you're never arguing, you're never differencing, what are you even doing?
Exactly.
You're not having a relationship. And he says like the real relationship starts when like you start to like look at all the problems, with your spouse or your wife or whatever. And then your partner, and then you sort of accept the things that are not perfect about them. And then that's when your relationship really starts. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I also like the fact that he brings this up many times. Like, there is no redeeming value in harshness. Like, and that's like not only being harsh to your spouse, but to yourself too. And how he talks about self-esteem and, know, because we are our worst critics, right? And he mentions that in the book is that there's no room for being harsh to yourself.
Correct.
You wouldn't let somebody, and he says this line, like, you wouldn't let somebody say that to you in the real world. So why are you saying it to yourself?
I like that. That was the thing with the airplane with the pen,
right?
Yeah. I like, because he said like, self-esteem is an activity, and like you have to actively summon warmth and caring for yourself. Like, That's hard too. I think like, I could talk very superficially about like being a woman. You look in the mirror and you're like, I got to lose 5 pounds here. Or after having kids, your body's changed. And, some mom's making origami food, and you're making a peanut butter and jelly, it's the like harshness, like that you speak to yourself. And like, I think that was something, again, that like after having Sophia and like her watching me, I try very, not to say those things out loud. I certainly think those things sometimes, but it's, that struck a chord as well. Like that harshness is like, there's no purpose of it.
Yeah.
I think that's really good because it's like, it's like, so I mean, I definitely, you kind of almost get into a pattern where you think you could be kind of crappy to yourself. Like you kind of just in your head, you make a mistake and you're like, you start like almost like yelling at yourself internally.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the heck? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Right.
And I love, what does he say? It's a cost of doing business. And then he just sat back in his seat with his pen mark all over his shirt. And he sipped his whiskey, whatever it was.
Yep.
And he just kept flying. And it's like, you know what? Pretty awesome, my man. Pretty awesome.
Yes.
Because I always think about like, whatever, we talk about this sometimes too, when we're like, nervous about like, you get a call at work, whatever else, your kids are sick. And then like the moment like you say like to the person, like, well, if it was you, what would you like if it was yourself, you're feeling this way, but then you look at the person, like if it was, your friend and their kid was sick, like it's a no brainer. Like you take care, we got to take care of it. But then yourself and you're hyperly, critical of yourself or like nervous about this or that. And it's like, almost like you have to treat yourself with the same respect. In all circumstances as you do with your friends. Because if you love your friends so much and you tell them good advice and you believe it and you think it's good for them, it should be good for you too,
Absolutely.
It's like one of those things that's so hard, to look internally and not crap all over yourself with certain things or hyper analytical, which is something that I'm sure is very easy to. But I love just that's such a great, 4 words, cost of doing business. I thought that was great,
Yeah, and you also just don't want your kids to be that way too. Like, everybody's hard on themselves. Like you need to be hard on yourselves to an extent to motivate yourself to do things, to show up and be there, whatever. But it's like, how do you teach that to your children? So, and the best way is, modeling it. If you model that practice of not being harsh to yourself, and that your kids see everything and they pick up on it. And I think that's just a good example for your children to grow up that way.
Yes.
I know it's hard, right? Because they're so undeveloped in their brains.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like that advice I've gotten a while ago was like, you have to be kind to the little child in you, and like you have to I was told you have to mother yourself. That was the phrasing that I got from that person. And so I try to tell my kids, like when they're unsure about something, once in a while when I remember to do it, like I'll say like, well, what advice would you give your friend if this was you? Like what would you, and to help them kind of use that strategy as well, because, we all think that we're doing a good job. Every once in a while, Gene and I were like, well, put $1 in the therapy jar because, we definitely didn't handle that properly, know?
Yeah.
So, like it's just.
But that
like,
humor is good.
Right. And I think there's nothing wrong with maybe showing them some of these strategies right now. Because you know what? Maybe they don't really get where it's coming from, like, and stuff like that. But like, I don't think it's like a bad thing to say like, hey, would you allow someone to say that about yourself right now because you can't get this math problem or your project fell apart? No. So let's, be kind to yourself.
It sounds so obvious when you say it out loud,
Right.
Yes.
But you're right. Like you wouldn't always think to do that or just say that to your kid. You're like, hey, what a token idea.
Yeah.
Would you just say it to them?
And that's,
and again,
that's
I don't use it all the time, but when it comes to mind and I'm not freaking out about whatever's happening as well.
Look, if it's happening sometimes, that's better than no times.
Right.
No, and this is something like I'm currently working on with like even Ellie right now. Ellie, my middle daughter, she's in cheer and she does so good. Her team's been struggling a little bit to place, and she is out there doing her thing. She's she's not messing up, and she's like being hard on herself that they're not placing or whatever because she's done something wrong or stepped wrong, And I'm like, it's good to push yourself, but it's a team sport. Like it's not, it's everybody's involved. So like, it's not just you, like, come on, you got to just keep going, So it's hard. It's hard to teach them, to kind of love themselves, not so harshly, right?
Correct.
Well, it's such like a performance type thing in so many ways. Where like, he talked about this in the book, but like some, whatever, somebody who's like a high performing CEO, sort of business, and always nervous that like, even though doing really well, like when is enough going to be enough?
Right.
And the fear that at any given moment you could tip over, because all you could do is go down if you're at the top.
Right.
Correct.
But like, I think like, Sarah joking around about the therapy jar and putting $1 in, like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that humor goes such a long way. Like that, the lightheartedness of like sort of laughing at yourself, or like acknowledging that it doesn't have to be so, you don't need to take it to heart so much where you made a mistake. And I think that moment where like you kind of laugh about it is that like exhale, where like you're sort of like letting out some of that like negativity, because you're like, you know what? Yeah, we messed up. But the thing that I think that you said that was so powerful to me, and I think Sarah, you're always a good reminder with this sort of thing, is like when these moments happen, and Mike, you've talked about it too, like explaining how arguments are with your kid and kind of explaining how people react, is taking the time to actually like unpack it afterwards and let them know, not to justify, but just to like let them know how you're dealing with it, or how like to understand that you're trying to teach them these things, but having the last part of the conversation where they could see how you resolved it. Because maybe there was a moment where you weren't proud of how you reacted, or maybe they saw something that, maybe it wasn't something that you want them to see, because you're trying to, maybe you feel in your mind that they're too young to kind of understand something, but taking the time to kind of help unpack it and help them see it and see how you react in a healthier way. I think that's okay, because you're gonna have these moments where you mess up, where people, right? We just talked about that with relationships, like having a boring relationship where you never argue, never see anything wrong, always eat the same foods, always like the same music. That's not reality. You're gonna have problems, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna argue, but like seeing how you deal with it, I think like that lesson is they're watching. I think your kids are watching more with how you wrap up the package and how you finish it and how you deal with it, a little bit more than just seeing how you react.
Dude, that is spot on. And that's what I hope, because like, when I get into those arguments, or I have that adaptive child kind of reaction, and I don't have it often, but it does happen, like you get so frustrated and it comes out. Like, if you remember, I did it with Lucas, and I talked about it, how I told him, it's one man, to be a real man is to know how to apologize and to know when you're wrong. And, I've also done it with Ellie too, in the sense where I've, flipped out on her about certain things that she's done. And I've gone pretty loud and pretty scary. And then I'm like, after it's all over, I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? And I'm thinking about it. And I'm like, I go in there and into her room, and, she's upset. And I sit with her for like 30, 40 minutes to just like make her understand why I did what I did. And I didn't mean it. And I didn't mean to be scary. I didn't mean to be like this crazy dad, and just to kind of like work through why I did what I did, and why it, it brought me to that level,
Right.
It's kind of like that moment where like you think of like an old cartoon where like you have like those like a really old cartoon where you have like a lion who has like, like a thorn in his paw and he's growling and, roaring at everybody. And then like, you get such a mystery because you think the lion's scary. And it's really because he's in pain. When you pop that out, he's like, "Oh, I'm good now."
That's a great analogy.
That really is. I love that.
But the kids don't know why you're screaming and yelling. They just think you're being a monster, you know. And then I remember, like when Noah, like we were getting like frustrated. Well, it's a daily basis. We're getting frustrated with him, like like not cleaning up or doing something wrong, and like eventually just lose it. You're like, "Come on, dude, you got to get this done. Put this away." And then he's like, "Are you, why are you yelling? Why are you mad at me?" And you're like, "My dude, we love you so much, but look around the floor. Look around. Like, come on. Do you think the floor having nothing on it is different than the floor having your stuff all over it?" But like, he's not perceiving it the way that I am. He's perceiving it as like all of a sudden, like I'm bad because, So then I have to reassure him, and I'm like, I don't think that you're bad. I think you're a great kid who makes bad choices sometimes. This is one of those times.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
A lot and a lot and a lot. It's like every day.
That's the other thing too that like kind of sits in my head is like, you know, our kids, they remember like that last. They don't remember. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like they remember just that moment of weakness rather than all the 100,000 moments you give them.
Yes.
That is like beautiful, right?
Right, right. They sure do.
Yeah.
But I think that's human nature.
I think you're missing a part of it.
Yeah. You know, like.
But I think you're missing the part that's so important is the relationship repair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I remember negative moments with my parents, and I think I associate them more with the apology and the repair. Like almost like the idea of like, you know, who feels they have to apologize or apologize for the other person, or who feel like how do you feel when it's starting to wrap up? Do you feel like you're being taken care of or not as a kid, or do you feel like you feel like that it's over, but you don't feel good about it?
Yeah.
And maybe that's what you kind of remember from when you were a kid. You know what I mean? Like I feel like if we could do better as parents, we can make sure, like we make it a damn good point that when these moments happen, that we don't let our kids feel like garbage afterwards.
Yeah.
Even if they did something so wrong, we talk about it. We like, you know, this is not a relationship where, you know, where we only love them on Tuesdays and Fridays. Like, I feel like they have to understand that we love them regardless. We're not their friends, but we love them regardless. And they feel like we have their backs. And when they mess up, we're going to help them. But that doesn't make them bad people. And I think that's something that at least if it's a takeaway from this book and being self-reflective and how you impact other people, I think the first half of the book, I feel pretty damn good about.
Right.
I guess like, you know, one of the last parts of where we, you know, talked to you guys at home about reading up to was the idea of writing your inner child a letter, which I haven't done yet. I kind of wanted some time to let that marinate and kind of like go through it because, you know, this is obviously because this is kind of the end of season 3. We're going to be back in, you know, a few weeks. I like that time in between to kind of maybe get the letter together and kind of think about it. But one thing that I kind of liked about what he had said about the letter itself was kind of like he gave you like the format, and I thought that was really good. He kind of shocked me a little bit when he talked about writing this letter, how it none of it's negative. It was really kind of interesting, and it's, you know, showing gratitude for your inner child and how they kind of got you through to this point in your life, the gifts it gave you. And then he talks about how kind of there's a cost associated with it. Like if you keep acting this way and keep reacting this way and going for your first consciousness instead of like digging into, you know, your adult consciousness, that there's a cost associated with it, and it could kind of impact you a certain way, and you should kind of acknowledge those things. And, you know, physical tolls, relationship tolls, you know, old survival skills are not really good. He says moving forward how now you can let the adult take over. You know, it's like, I got this. You know, I don't need these things anymore. I appreciate it, but I don't need them. So I just really like that. I thought that was like, it's funny because he hasn't given me a reason to not trust him. Mm-hmm. He hasn't given me a reason to think that he's gonna like crap all over you. You know? But like, and just another example of what I think I expected to happen because of like just the format. You kind of almost expect it's going to be like, oh, now you're going to like tell your you know, your inner child that you stop right now. I got this covered, but it's actually showing an appreciation for it.
Yeah, because it goes back to that whole like, you know, that harshness. Like, what does he call it? It's not. It's love. Hold on, I think I wrote it down here somewhere. There is no redeeming value in harshness, right? So like, instead of telling your childhood self to like kick rocks, right? You're just telling it.
Right,
you're saying, listen, thanks for getting me to where I am, you know, and I'm gonna let my adult side take over now, you know.
Yeah, I got this, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to write this letter. A little. I know it's going to probably be emotionally driven, I think. So I'm gearing up to do this, but I think that it's beautiful, you know, to do something like this, because, you know, especially the part that it's like, all right, I got this, little Sarah. Like, oh man.
Yeah.
You know what I kind of want to do, I like writing, writing's fine, but I kind of want to like do a voice kind of memo, something like Star Trek where it's like, Stardate, 3, 2, 1, 5,
I know
6.
you're gonna start Captain's Log.
Captain's Log, right? I'm gonna Captain's Log myself and kind of just do it that way. I think because I don't know. I think it's. I want to write the letter, but like I want to hear myself say it to myself. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh, so you could hear like almost like listening to
like
this,
I'm
like this audiobook.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love it. I think I might do that too, Livy. Oh, that's a good idea.
Just so I don't know. I just
never play it for anyone. But yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Just like I don't know.
I kind of listen to it when you need it, a little boost.
Exactly.
Like but I think just to be clear, audience members, we're not planning on reading our letters on the second half of the book. What we are planning on doing is writing the letters. Maybe we'll kind of like talk about how that experience was for us. Just like maybe you at home will be maybe doing the same and then thinking about kind of your experiences from that as well. And then one other little friendly reminder, just good thing to keep in mind. Some of the things in these book that he mentions is not for external use. So keep some of these things internal. They're not all for sharing. So, working on yourself, working on how you react to things. We don't know. We're going to be reading the second half of the book with you guys in the second half of the season. So we have, we're going to have 4 weeks in between. And then we'll tell you at the beginning of next season when we're planning on having an episode for the second half of the book. We hope that you enjoyed this kind of thing with the book club. But you know what, guys? It's not the end of the show just yet. You know why? Because it is now the time for us to shift on over to the next part of our show. It is called Time to Unplug. This is where we talk about things that are going on outside of our children, because sometimes you just have to have something for ourselves with our spouses. It gives us a chance to decompress because you'll be a better we if you take care of me. And with that, as always, let's start with Sarah D.
Okay, so something Gene and I watched was Wayward on Netflix, and that was a great little mini series that we watched. It just basically, like, not to spoil it, it's just this couple, they move back into like the small town and everything just seems a little off, and there's a child that is running away from a local like rehab like detention center for children, and it's like the mystery that kind of like unravels and all of that. So I think it was definitely a good watch. It was entertaining and I would recommend it.
That's awesome. All right, I'm going to check that out. Is it a bunch of episodes or it's not too long?
Yeah, it's like 8 episodes.
Oh, nice. You could get through that pretty quickly.
Yes.
All right, Levine, what do you got?
I don't know if you guys have seen, but a new movie came out, Predator Borderlands, and oh my God, it was amazing.
This was
yeah, my review is that it was amazing. It was, I don't know. I love like sci-fi movies. Predator's always been cool. My favorite, will always be the original with Arnold Schwarzenegger. But definitely a cool, different take on Predator because they kind of do it from the perspective of the actual alien predator thing itself, rather than it's usually like a human is being chased by a predator and it doesn't want to, it's hunting them. But this is like you're the predator and you're like seeing their lifestyle, like their whole culture and everything. So it was pretty cool.
Oh,
yeah.
That's kind of cool.
That sounds kind of cool, actually.
And you thought it was good.
Oh yeah, super good. Definitely check it out, and it's amazing.
Very nice. Man, that was a long time ago, the first Predator,
know, right?
with Arnold Schwarzenegger jumping in the mud.
Exactly.
Man.
Get to the chopper.
That's it. It's like awesome. We just had Arnold Schwarzenegger guest our show. Incredible.
What about you, Mike? What do you got going on?
So I just finished Nobody Wants to season 2. Kind of good. It's all good, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about Stranger Things. Ooh. So Stranger Things started a rewatch. Started with season 1. Trying my gosh darnest to get through all of Stranger Things before season 5 pops the day before Thanksgiving. It is really cool to rewatch Stranger Things, and obviously if you if you've been living under a rock or have been living under a rock, you've probably heard of Stranger Things. But I will say for 2 things. One is I don't know if I ever really rewatched it. Or maybe I did, but I was kind of in a rush. But rewatching it now, holy moly, the first season, there's so much foreshadowing that goes on. It is crazy. It's so good. And there's definitely like so much heart in it. And the nice thing is that when you watch it the second time around, you can, whenever it is, like season 3, you can skip the Chicago episodes.
Ooh.
Look at that. Save some time. You don't need to go to watch 11 Meet Her Friends in Chicago.
They do such a good job of connecting like all the stuff in the storylines, right? When you get a really good show.
Yes.
Like, do these directors and producers go back, or are they just geniuses and remember every line from, you know?
Right? I know, we'll never know, but it does connect really nicely, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I will say, though, thinking about it, I don't know who's going to pop out the other side of season 5, but everybody's got their favorites. For me, Hop, Dustin, hope everybody works, and Steve, hope everybody hops out okay through this experience. But love the show, and I'm sure that the 3 of us will definitely be discussing.
Oh, yeah.
when,
yes.
season
And it's so
5
crazy to
pops.
see them so older now, right? Like we started.
Oh
it's
my
like
God,
Harry,
yeah.
It's like the
Yeah.
current Harry Potter, like of the times, you know, where they started out as kids doing the show, and now they're older. So it's like weird. It's crazy.
Yes.
I know, it's like watching Hanson when they sing Mbop. It's so much deeper. So I think we're just about out of time on this episode of Hey the Parents. It's been so much fun hanging out with Mike and Sarah as we talked about the Terry Real Fierce Intimacy book for the first half. We'd like to take a special moment to thank our listeners, our supporters for donating to the show. If you want to help support this show so we can keep making episodes like this one, we have a link to donate in the show notes. If you don't have the means to do so, we always appreciate it when you tell your friends and your family about the podcast so you can reach more listeners. Hey, we got 4 weeks off. Maybe they could listen to 3 seasons of Hey the Parents and get really caught up. Maybe we can learn from them. They can learn from us in this growing community. And if you get a chance, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We can't wait to explore this parenting thing again with you next time in Hey the Parents, because every week it's an honest discussion about raising kids. And remember, we'll see you again in Hey the Parents on December 12th. And until then, don't forget to hug your kids and charge those Chromebooks. That's going to do it for me, for Sarah, and for Mike, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hey the Parents is produced by Mike Levine, Sarah Desirbeans, and me, Michael Haidt. I edit and mix our show. Our intro voice recording was done by the one and only Coltrane. If you like our show, we hope you consider going to the show notes and help support the podcast. Check the show notes for social media information and contacts, and we look forward to seeing you next time.